Halo 3 was one of the most anticipated games ever leading up to its launch in 2007. As part of my series of mainline Halo campaign reviews, I've set my sights on what was supposed to originally be the end of Master Chief's story. I have never actually played Halo 3 due to not having a 360, so I aim to conduct this review with minimal biases, but of course this is all just my opinion at the end of the day. On a presentation level, I will be focusing on how this game looked for 2007, as well as how it has aged. Similar to my other Halo reviews, there will be some mild spoilers, but let's not waste any more time and finish this fight. Halo 3 picks up loosely where Halo 2 left off with some unaccounted time in between. Immediately, you as the player and Master Chief feel the absence of Cortana, not there to give you direction and good banter. When it comes to getting guidance and direction on a gameplay level, this hole is somewhat filled by Captain Miranda Keyes, but you definitely feel the lack of Cortana's presence on a narrative level. After a rather uncordial meeting, the Arbiter and Chief are established as allies with the mutual goal of taking down the Prophet of Truth. Mankind and elites are also part of this fragile alliance. For some reason that was never explained during my playthrough, the Grunts and Hunters have completely sided with the Brutes compared to where we left off at the end of Halo 2. Of course, besides the Brutes, the Flood plays a vital role in terms of the direction the story takes. We find many callbacks to both Combat Evolved and Halo 2 sprinkled throughout with the mostly spot-on dialogue. Master Chief strikes a great balance, similar to last time in Halo 2, where he remains a great vessel for players to experience the universe, with a handful of moments that give a glimpse to the man beneath the helmet. Due to where Cortana was left off at the end of Halo 2, she plays a smaller but still important role in this installment. I think much of the brief time spent with her was utilized well. However, I found on both a gameplay and narrative level the constant interruptions of her didn't work. I appreciate the thought behind it, but believe Bungie could have done a better job of communicating to players the dangers surrounding Cortana. The way they went about it came across more as annoying than motivating. The Arbiter made a great companion to fight aside you during missions while also showing unmatched loyalty later in the campaign, but I do feel he pulled the short straw when it came to his development as a character. I don't think choosing Master Chief as the only playable character was a mistake per se, but I do believe that it was definitely a mistake to give the Arbiter such a minuscule role when compared to what the previous game had set up for him. In many ways, Halo 2 was all about the Arbiter and his complex relationship with the Covenant, so to throw it all away is disappointing. In a lot of ways, due to not playing as the Arbiter, it could have served as an even more ideal condition than before to explore him as a character from the perspective of Chief. But instead, he is left as just a likable character with a lot of missed opportunity. Being an action sci-fi space opera, there are plenty of examples of convenient plot devices throughout the series, but Halo 3 definitely takes the cake for the most up to this point. There were a few moments that seemed a little too convenient for my liking on a contextual level. This isn't to say Halo 3 doesn't accomplish its primary goal of concluding the story in a mostly satisfying way, but it is definitely the weakest link of the three games on a story level. When it comes to the presentation, Halo 3 has aged well in some ways and not so much in others. For this review, however, it would be silly to compare it to modern titles, so my main focus is in the art direction. The first thing I want to mention is the superb mission design on a visual level. These levels really show growth and progression as far as looking and feeling like a real lived in and breathing place. Of course, the upgrade in power of the Xbox 360 helps, but I think the experience of working on two previous games is also a big factor. I'm personally not a fan of the addition of a visor in my point of view. I was surprised to find out there was no option to remove it, but was able to mostly adapt to it always being there in my peripherals, much like the dangling cord of a dash cam. As far as the audio goes, I think it's about as close to perfection as it gets. The sound effects are fine-tuned and polished, while the music remains an indispensable part of the Halo experience.
Focus. She's a little cook, Sergeant Major. She'll hold. All right, pop that.
Many of the classic themes are here in the form of new adaptations that feel familiar yet new. If the game's soundtrack had been entirely new and different, it just wouldn't have quite felt like a Halo game. On the other hand, if they had recycled the exact same playlist previously used, that would have felt lazy and old. So I believe Bungie struck a great balance here. Compared to the first two games focusing on great universe building, Halo 3 switches gears to primarily focus on concluding its story while expanding its gameplay. The game does still excel in pulling players into the universe of Halo while giving us more time to get to know familiar locations like Earth. I personally enjoyed visiting the wide array of biomes and climates when going to war for the fate of humanity. When stacked up to the first two games, Halo 3's story is somewhat lacking, but the gameplay on the other hand is easily the best of the three. Halo 3's roster of weapons is massive and varied, really succeeding in presenting a wide array of options to the player. All of the classics are accounted for with some truly unique concepts thrown in. Many of the new weapons add to the existing inventory while maintaining balance. I had a rush of jubilation come over me the first time I discovered the ability to remove a machine gun turret from its base to then mow down Covenant on the go. It was times like these that had me stop and reflect about how much fun I was having. Due to the large selection of viable weapons per each scenario, I found myself constantly having an internal debate about what I wanted to use. In the previous two titles, I often felt like there was always an obvious best choice, but here that isn't the case. This is a good problem to have that had me feeling like a kid in a candy shop. This good problem also applies to the catalog of vehicles. Similar to the weapons, you have the option to pilot all of the beloved classics with the addition of several new joyrides. Battle tanks are just as dangerous as before, annihilating everything in its path. Ghost and Banshees are also still here as ideal vehicles to outmaneuver brute force. As far as new rides go, my favorite would have to be the Prowler. With great speed and maneuverability, the Prowler can cause some real damage when equipped with a gunner. Single-handedly taking out two Scarabs easily stood out as one of the highlight moments of me playing the game. Most of the familiar sets of enemies are here, with the Flood now having 3 new and varied forms. Due to now having the elites on your side, there are a lot more brutes to kill. While not being a new enemy type, brutes are revised here with new armor and a hierarchy of roles throughout combat. Now with the role of a chief brute in place, the chieftain is accompanied by the glorious gravity hammer, which is all yours for the taking. Combat is as electrifying and versatile as it's ever been in this installment. Halo 3 does an especially good job of encapsulating the theme of war. Due to the added forces on both sides of each conflict, you feel as Master Chief that you are not alone, but are part of a larger conflict. Oftentimes in the previous two entries, I would feel I was a solo hero who needed to save the world because nobody else could. But in this title, you really feel more of a sense of community and teamwork by having the Marine forces and the Arbiter at your side. Master Chief still feels like a queen on a chessboard, but is now accompanied by his rooks and bishops instead of just a few pawns. This feeling of being in war fits perfectly as the final chapter in Bungie's Master Chief trilogy. This feeling also helps Halo 3 find harmony throughout its gameplay modes. Even with all the new additions to the game, Bungie has managed to make the most balanced Halo experience on a gameplay level. Equally as important, I believe Halo 3 offers the most fun to be had by players. Halo 3 does an exceptional job of concluding Bungie's Master Chief saga with some minor hiccups in storytelling, while having the most polished gameplay to date. 9 out of 10. Even with some of the flaws I mentioned earlier, I do believe Halo 3 has a great story that ties up the trilogy about as good as it could have. I want to hear from you down below, so feel free to leave a comment. I've also done reviews for the campaigns of Combat Evolved and Halo 2, so feel free to check those out, as well as 4 and 5 once I've uploaded them leading up to Infinite. I want to thank you all for watching, and until next time, see ya!